What if I told you the same company that once built weaving looms now makes some of the most advanced outboards on the planet? Suzuki's story on the water is one of the greatest underdog transformations in boating. From a tiny 5.5 horsepower motor in 1965 to award-winning 350 horsepower beasts with dual propellers, Suzuki has shocked rivals, changed fishing forever, and even invented technology others now chase. This is the entire history of Suzuki Marine, revealed. By the early 1960s, Suzuki was already known worldwide for its motorcycles and small cars, but the seas were still uncharted territory. Fishing was a way of life across Japan, and the post-war boom meant more people wanted to head offshore for leisure too. Small wooden boats powered by oars or unreliable motors dominated the market, and Suzuki saw an opportunity. They had the engineering expertise. Their two-stroke engines for motorcycles were light, simple, and dependable, the very qualities that boaters needed. At the time, outboards were bulky, expensive, and often difficult to maintain. Suzuki engineers believed they could deliver a motor that was compact, affordable, and easy for the everyday fisherman to trust. The decision was bold. Suzuki was stepping into waters dominated by established names like Mercury and Johnson. But unlike the American brands, Suzuki's focus was small displacement power plants suited to coastal waters and compact boats. The company knew that most Japanese fishermen didn't need massive horsepower. They needed something reliable enough to start every morning and rugged enough to handle salt water. This idea sparked Suzuki's Marine division. It was a pivot from land to sea, but the philosophy remained the same. Build engines that regular people could depend on. In 1965, after years of experimenting with marine adaptations of their motorcycle engines, Suzuki unveiled their first true outboard. That engine was called the D55, and it was the start of something much bigger. And before we dive into that first outboard, let me ask you, do you think Suzuki, a company once known only for weaving looms and motorcycles, could ever go head-to-head with Mercury and Yamaha on the open ocean? Stick with me until the end of this video, because when we get to Suzuki's big horsepower monsters like the DF350A, you'll see just how far they pushed the limits. The year 1965 marked Suzuki's official entry into the marine engine world with the D55. It was a 5.5 horsepower, two-stroke outboard, and while modest in size, it carried enormous significance. The D55 represented Suzuki's first attempt to translate their mastery of lightweight engines into a marine package. Unlike many outboards of the era, the D55 was designed with simplicity at its core. It was light enough to be lifted by hand, compact enough to fit on the transom of small wooden boats, and easy enough to maintain with basic tools. This made it perfect for the small-scale fisherman or recreational boater. What really stood out about the D55 was Suzuki's decision to prioritize efficiency and user-friendliness. The pull-start mechanism was smooth, and the motor was known for starting reliably, even after sitting idle for days. At a time when many outboards earned a reputation for being temperamental, this was a game changer. The D55 wasn't powerful enough to push big boats, but that wasn't the point. It filled a niche. In Japan's harbors, lakes, and coastal communities, the D55 became a trusted companion. It laid the foundation for Suzuki's marine identity: small, smart, and dependable. From this single model, Suzuki began expanding their range. They would go on to develop larger two-strokes, export them overseas, and gradually build a reputation that rivaled the industry's giants. But everything started with that little 5.5 horsepower outboard in 1965, a motor that quietly launched Suzuki's marine legacy. After the D55 proved Suzuki could build a reliable outboard, the company wasted no time expanding its range. The late 1960s and 1970s were the golden years of the two-stroke engine, and Suzuki leaned fully into it. These motors were light, powerful for their size, and simple to maintain. For fishermen and small boat owners, that balance was exactly what they needed. Suzuki's lineup grew with engines like the D8 and D95, modestly powered two-strokes that could be mounted on skiffs, dinghies, and small fishing boats. They became a common sight across Japan's coastal towns. What made them appealing was the start-and-go reliability. While competitors sometimes gained a reputation for being difficult to start, Suzuki motors were known for firing up quickly, even in damp and salty conditions. By the mid-1970s, Suzuki was exporting to global markets, particularly Southeast Asia, where two-strokes were indispensable for fishermen. Their small size, ability to run on modest quality fuel, and easy repairability made them popular in places where parts availability was limited. Even in Western markets like the US and Europe, Suzuki gained traction with portable two-strokes ranging from 2 to 25 horsepower. Weekend anglers and families valued the affordability. Dealers often highlighted that Suzuki's two-strokes were engineered by a company that cut its teeth on motorcycles, and that racing heritage gave confidence to buyers. This era set Suzuki apart as a company that understood the needs of small boaters. By keeping engines light and practical, they weren't chasing raw horsepower just yet. Instead, Suzuki was building loyalty among the everyday users who depended on their boats for both work and leisure. While Suzuki is best remembered for outboards, they also dabbled in inboards during the 1970s and 1980s, though this side of the story is often overlooked. With car engines already under their belt, adapting them for marine use seemed like a natural step. Suzuki's early inboards were largely based on small displacement automotive engines, particularly inline fours that had already proven themselves in cars like the Swift and Vitara. These engines were marinized with cooling jackets and corrosion protection, then paired with stern drive systems to power small cruisers and sport boats. The idea was to provide boat builders with a compact, affordable inboard option. Although Suzuki never achieved the dominance of companies like Mercruiser or Volvo Penta in this space, their inboards earned respect for their reliability. In particular, small diesel inboards developed in partnership with other manufacturers found a market in Asia and Europe, where fuel economy was critical. These were often used in working boats and river craft, where durability mattered more than high performance. Suzuki's inboard efforts showed the brand's willingness to diversify, but they never scaled in the same way as outboards. Demand for outboards was exploding worldwide, while inboard markets were crowded with established players. By the 1990s, Suzuki largely pulled back from direct inboard production, focusing instead on outboards where their innovations made the biggest impact. Even so, Suzuki's experiments with inboards left behind valuable experience in engine marinization, cooling systems, and durability under constant load. Many of the lessons learned found their way into later outboard designs, helping Suzuki refine the technology that would make them one of the most awarded outboard manufacturers in the world. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, the glory days of the two-stroke were numbered. Around the world, stricter environmental laws were targeting the smoke, noise, and fuel inefficiency of traditional carbureted two-stroke outboards. In the United States, the EPA began rolling out emission standards in 1990. Europe and Japan followed with their own regulations. Suddenly, every marine manufacturer had a choice: adapt or be left behind. For Suzuki, the answer was four-stroke technology. Unlike two-strokes, four-strokes burned cleaner, sipped less fuel, and produced lower emissions. They were heavier and more complex, but the writing was on the wall. Boaters wanted engines that wouldn't smoke up the marina, regulators wanted greener waters, and Suzuki saw an opening to leap ahead of rivals. In 1994, Suzuki launched its first modern four-stroke outboards, including the DF 9.9 and DF 15. They were compact, quiet, and efficient. Although horsepower was modest, these engines showcased what four-stroke technology could do when engineered with Suzuki's precision. Customers noticed the difference immediately: less noise, less vibration, and much better fuel economy. Throughout the 1990s, Suzuki doubled down on four-stroke development. While rivals like Mercury and Yamaha were still refining oil-injected two-strokes, Suzuki's focus was clearly shifting toward a cleaner future. Their decision wasn't without risk, but it set them up for global recognition. By the time the EPA's Phase 2 standards kicked in at the start of the 2000s, Suzuki already had one of the most comprehensive four-stroke lineups in the industry. This transition was more than just meeting regulations. It marked the beginning of Suzuki Marine's identity as a technology leader. The era of the DF series was about to begin, and it would propel Suzuki into the spotlight like never before. And here's where it gets exciting, because what Suzuki unveiled next didn't just meet regulations, it rewrote the rulebook. The DF series outboards would introduce world-first technologies that left rivals scrambling to catch up. Stay with me, because in a moment we'll hit the engines that not only won awards, but redefined what boaters expected from four-strokes. The launch of the DF series in the late 1990s changed everything for Suzuki. The DF60 and DF70, released in 1997, were the first four-stroke outboards in the world to feature electronic fuel injection. This was a breakthrough at a time when most manufacturers were still using carburetors. Fuel injection meant smoother throttle response, cleaner running, and better fuel economy. It set Suzuki apart overnight. From there, innovation became the hallmark of the DF lineup. In 2006, Suzuki introduced its lean burn control system, which automatically adjusted the fuel-air mixture for optimal efficiency at cruising speeds. Boaters suddenly found themselves going farther on the same tank, a feature that proved especially valuable for offshore anglers who needed long range. Another groundbreaking move came with the DF 300 in 2007, Suzuki's first production outboard to use 300 horsepower in a four-stroke. It was a monster, but the real magic arrived a decade later with the DF 350A. This engine debuted in 2017 with contra-rotating dual propellers, a world first for a 350 horsepower outboard. The twin-prop setup improved hole shot, increased stability, and delivered unmatched grip in tight maneuvers. It was engineering brilliance applied directly to the boating experience. These innovations didn't go unnoticed. The National Marine Manufacturers Association, NMMA, awarded Suzuki Innovation Awards multiple times across the 2000s and 2010s for breakthroughs in four-stroke technology. By constantly staying ahead of the curve, Suzuki built a reputation not just as a manufacturer, but as a pioneer. Today, the DF series represents one of the most comprehensive ranges of four-stroke outboards in the world, spanning from portable 2.5 horsepower units to the cutting-edge 350s. What began as a response to regulation became the defining identity of Suzuki Marine: efficiency, durability, and bold innovation. For decades, Suzuki was known for practical, mid-range motors that powered fishing boats, pontoons, and small offshore rigs. But in the 2000s, the company set its sights on the big leagues. Offshore center consoles were growing larger and faster, and boat builders wanted serious horsepower hanging off their transoms. Suzuki answered in 2007 with the DF 300. Its first 300 horsepower four-stroke, the DF300 was a statement piece. It combined big block displacement with electronic fuel injection, dual overhead cams, and Suzuki's trademark reliability. Suddenly, Suzuki wasn't just supplying motors for small boats. It was competing directly with Yamaha's V6 offshore lineup and Mercury's Verado series. For offshore anglers, the DF300 offered both grunt and efficiency, proving that Suzuki could build a big motor without sacrificing fuel economy. But Suzuki didn't stop there. In 2017, they shocked the industry again with the DF350A. This outboard pushed 350 horsepower and introduced the world to contra-rotating dual propellers on a production motor. Instead of one propeller biting the water, the DF350A used two, spinning in opposite directions. The result was incredible thrust, better low-speed handling, and grip in turns that single-prop competitors couldn't match. Offshore captains praised it as a game-changer. In 2021, Suzuki refined the formula with the DF350AMD, featuring advanced gearcase design and smoother shifting. It built on the legacy of the DF350A, showing that Suzuki wasn't just interested in raw horsepower, but in continuous refinement. These engines proved that Suzuki could go toe-to-toe with the giants. From the reliable DF300 to the radical dual-prop DF350 series, Suzuki outboards became a serious choice for big offshore boats, sport fishing vessels, and high-performance cruisers. It was the point where Suzuki fully earned its place among the leaders of the horsepower race. While outboards became the core of Suzuki Marine's reputation, the company never fully abandoned inboards. Instead, Suzuki pursued partnerships and niche projects, especially in regions where inboards still dominated. In the 1970s and 1980s, Suzuki experimented with marinizing its compact automotive engines for small cruisers and runabouts. Gasoline inline fours, adapted from Suzuki's car lineup, were marketed as affordable alternatives to larger Mercruiser or Volvo Penta packages. They were not as powerful as V6 or V8 inboards, but they found a place in smaller sport boats where space and budget were limited. Later, Suzuki turned attention to diesel. Working with marine partners in Europe and Asia, Suzuki diesel inboards were offered for workboats, riverboats, and utility vessels. These engines were prized for fuel efficiency and long service life, two qualities especially valued outside the US, where fuel costs were high. However, Suzuki's inboard ventures faced stiff competition. Brands like Yanmar dominated diesel markets, while Mercruiser and Volvo Penta had strong dealer networks in gasoline stern drives. Suzuki never achieved major global market share with inboards, but their projects were far from wasted. The knowledge gained from marinizing engines fed directly back into outboard innovation. Lessons in cooling systems, corrosion protection, and continuous load durability helped shape the DF series that would later win multiple awards. Today, Suzuki's name is rarely associated with inboards, but the legacy of those experiments is still present. Their inboards carved out small but loyal niches, and the partnerships they forged allowed Suzuki to test technologies that strengthened their true marine stronghold, the outboard. By the 2000s, Suzuki's marine division was no longer a small side business. It was an industry leader. Proof of that came from the National Marine Manufacturers Association, or NMMA, which began awarding Suzuki its prestigious Innovation Award multiple times. These awards are not handed out lightly. They recognize genuine advances that change how boaters experience the water. Suzuki first won in 1997 with the DF60 and DF70, the world's first production four-stroke outboards with electronic fuel injection. More awards followed for technologies like lean burn control and the dual-prop DF350A. By the late 2010s, Suzuki had collected more NMMA Innovation Awards than nearly any other outboard brand. For dealers and customers, those trophies sent a clear message. Suzuki was setting the pace in marine engineering. Recognition also came in the form of global growth. Suzuki Marine expanded its dealer network aggressively, especially in markets where reliability and fuel economy mattered more than raw horsepower. Southeast Asia, the Pacific Islands, and parts of Africa became strongholds for Suzuki, while in the US and Europe, Suzuki found a loyal following among saltwater anglers who valued quiet operation and fuel efficiency on long runs offshore. The company also promoted its Clean Ocean project, a campaign that connected Suzuki's clean-running 4 strokes with environmental responsibility. By 2020, Suzuki was not only recognized as a manufacturer of advanced engines, but also as a brand that tied its identity to sustainability. Winning awards gave Suzuki credibility. Building global networks gave them reach. Together, they reinforced the idea that Suzuki wasn't just another Japanese outboard maker. It was a technology-driven, globally respected player, capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with the industry's biggest names. But recognition is one thing. Market dominance is another. Stick with me, because next we'll uncover where Suzuki rules the seas, where it struggles against rivals, and why fishermen in some of the most remote corners of the world swear by that S logo on their outboard. You won't want to miss what comes next. Suzuki's impact on the global marine market has always been strategic. Unlike Yamaha or Mercury, who dominate across all categories, Suzuki carved out its strength in specific niches. In the small to mid-range horsepower classes, particularly 2.5 to 140 horsepower, Suzuki is often the go-to choice. These engines power fishing boats, tenders, pontoons, and coastal runabouts. Their lightweight design and fuel efficiency give them an edge, especially in markets where cost of ownership is critical. In emerging regions like Southeast Asia, India, and Africa, Suzuki has become the dominant brand. For fishermen who use their boats daily, fuel efficiency is not a luxury, it is survival. Suzuki's lean burn 4 strokes offered real savings, and that cemented loyalty in these markets. Local dealers often note that Suzuki engines, even in remote villages, are recognized for their ability to run for years with minimal issues. In Western markets, Suzuki built a reputation in saltwater fishing. Offshore anglers in Florida, the Gulf Coast, and Australia embraced the DF300 and DF350 for their long-range efficiency. Suzuki's dual-prop DF350A became a favorite on big center consoles, carving out a piece of a market once dominated by Yamaha's offshore V6s and Mercury's Verados. Where Suzuki does not dominate is telling. Inboard markets remain the territory of Mercruiser, Volvo Penta, and Yanmar. High-performance racing is still Mercury's playground. And in sheer sales numbers, Yamaha holds the crown globally. But Suzuki doesn't need to be number 1 in volume. Instead, it thrives in carefully chosen niches where technology, reliability, and fuel efficiency matter most. This approach has made Suzuki a quiet giant in marine power. Their engines may not always be the flashiest, but in markets around the world, they have become the trusted choice for people who depend on the water every day. For all of Suzuki's innovations, the marine world is fiercely competitive. 3 names dominate every conversation: Yamaha, Mercury, and Honda. Each one is a heavyweight, and Suzuki has had to fight for its place among them. Yamaha's biggest advantage is volume. They are the largest outboard manufacturer in the world, with a dealer network that stretches into almost every harbor. In many markets, especially in the US and Asia, Yamaha is seen as the default choice. Suzuki has to work twice as hard to prove itself against that brand recognition. Mercury, on the other hand, leans on brute power and performance. Their Verado supercharged engines defined offshore horsepower for years, and their racing division built a cult following. Suzuki's answer, the DF350A with dual props, showed they could innovate just as boldly. But Mercury's marketing muscle often overshadows Suzuki's quieter approach. Then there is Honda. They entered the four-stroke game early and built a reputation for automotive-grade engineering. In many ways, Suzuki and Honda are similar, both Japanese, both efficient, both focused on clean four strokes. But Honda tends to be conservative with innovation, while Suzuki pushes out riskier ideas like lean burn and contra-rotating props. Despite these challenges, Suzuki has carved out a loyal following by offering something slightly different: a balance of affordability, cutting-edge tech, and bulletproof reliability. They may not outsell Yamaha, outmuscle Mercury, or outbrand Honda, but they deliver engines that consistently win awards and earn trust on the water. In a market where reputations are made and broken by dependability, Suzuki has survived decades of rivalry by sticking to its formula: innovation that serves the everyday boater, not just the marketing brochure. Today, Suzuki Marine stands as one of the most respected names in outboards. Their lineup spans from portable 2.5 horsepower engines for dinghies to 350 horsepower monsters that power offshore sport fishing boats. Inboards are no longer their focus, but the engineering lessons remain embedded in every DF series motor. What sets Suzuki apart today is their environmental push. Through the Clean Ocean project, Suzuki has pledged to not only reduce engine emissions, but also to address marine plastic pollution. They even developed a microplastic collection system that filters debris as the outboard runs, a small but symbolic step toward greener boating. Looking ahead, Suzuki is exploring hybrid and electric propulsion. Regulations in Europe and parts of Asia are pushing the industry toward zero-emissions boating, especially in lakes and protected coastal areas. Suzuki has hinted at hybrid outboards that combine electric motors for low-speed maneuvering with gasoline engines for range. Research into hydrogen combustion is also underway, though it remains a long-term vision. The challenge for Suzuki will be to balance its reputation for reliable four-strokes with the leap into next-generation technologies. If they can deliver electric and hybrid systems with the same dependability as the DF series, they could secure a leadership role in the industry's future. Suzuki's story began with a 5.5 horsepower two-stroke in 1965. Today, it is a global marine powerhouse. The next chapter will determine whether Suzuki can lead the transition to cleaner, smarter, and more sustainable boating. Given their track record, betting against them would be unwise. So I would just say a few things more. From the humble D55 outboard to the groundbreaking DF350A, Suzuki Marine has proven time and again that innovation and reliability go hand in hand. Their journey through two-strokes, inboards, four-strokes, and award-winning DF engines shows a company willing to take risks while never losing sight of the everyday boater. Suzuki may not always be the loudest name in the industry, but their engines speak for themselves. Quiet, efficient, dependable, and often years ahead of their time. Whether you are running a portable four-stroke on a dinghy or twin DF 350As on an offshore center console, Suzuki's legacy is clear. They build engines that last. So what do you think? Has Suzuki done enough to stand equal with Yamaha and Mercury? Or do you see them as an underdog that thrives in its niche? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Suzuki's marine history, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more, and share it with a fellow boater. Because when it comes to the water, knowing the story behind your engine is just as important as knowing how to run it.